Hi everyone, and welcome back to the online event, Women Who Want It All, How to Create Outer Success, Inner Peace, and Lasting Fulfillment. Today we have a juicy conversation around our bodies and weight loss. We have with us Brittany Watkins. She's an expert coach in helping people lose weight. She's an author, and she's an expert also in emotional freedom technique, which will tell you what that is, but it's something I love and I use in my everyday. She has helped a lot of women and men get rid of their emotional eating and really be able to construct a healthy relationship with food, lose the weight, and live very vibrant and energizing lives. She has her own personal story that I'm sure she'll share with us. And Brittany, welcome. I'm very excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So the theme of this summit is Women Who Want It All. And I am curious, do you feel like you're a woman who has it all?
You know, I really do. I mean, it's a hard kind of thing to like own and claim, but I really, if I look at my life and when other people look at my life, I think they think that, right? And, not to say that I'm perfect or that I don't have my struggles, because I definitely do, but what I live the life that I've always wanted. I live in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, which is about 20 steps from the Caribbean Ocean. And I do what I love for work. I'm passionate about helping women. I've always been passionate about teaching EFT, and now I do that for work. So, other than the relationship, which I'm still working on that, I would say my life is pretty great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, one of the things that I've seen throughout these interviews is that having it all is like, it doesn't mean that we're done or that our lives is perfect. We all have one area of our life we're working on and growing. But so what does it mean to you to have it all?
Well, I think having it all is going to be different for everybody. I think for me, having it all means that my life is flowing smoothly, that I'm waking up every morning and life isn't difficult. So I'm excited about what I'm doing. I can walk out my door and be inspired by my environment. I can look around at the people around me and just love them and feel a mutual beneficial relationship with them. So yeah, I mean, I think that's gonna be different for everybody. Also experiencing emotional freedom, having freedom with your body, loving yourself, talking to yourself nicely, not comparing yourself to other women. I think that's another way that we create freedom in our lives.
Awesome. So what led you, today you have this thriving business, this lifestyle that you wanted. What led you to start creating all this? Like, if you can tell us a little bit of your story.
Well, there's always a rock bottom moment. My rock bottom came when I had a previous career in real estate, and I had made a bunch of money and was really successful. And then the real estate market started to collapse, which I think everybody in America remembers quite well still. And I got to this point where I couldn't do something just for the money anymore. I was really good at making money, but I couldn't I just was feeling empty inside. And I couldn't figure out how to make money with my passion, but there was this moment that came where I just made a decision that I was not going to sacrifice my values just for the sake of money. And so I'll never forget, there was this, I was kind of doing this program, like find your purpose, or find the work find your most passionate work, something like that. And the question that they asked me was, if you had all the money in the world, how would you spend your time? And like, I really had to think about that. It's a pretty common question that people ask, when you're doing this kind of training, but I walked around my apartment for 4 days and I couldn't figure it out. And then it finally came to me that I would teach tapping, because I was always the person that when somebody had a problem, I'd go, hey, I have this technique here. And I'd push them into a corner and be like, let me try this tapping thing with you. Right. So it was all very experimental to me, and I just loved it. In my free time, I would watch tapping videos from people that were really good tappers and try to learn from them, So, I I think for me, it started with a decision, you know, and you hear about this a lot with personal development. It's like, make a decision that you're going to change something. And it's like, I just reached that point where I was like, okay, this is it. I feel lifeless inside. Something needs to change. And so I made that powerful decision, and then started to figure out how that I could actually make that work, you know, and I kind of wasn't so worried about the dollar amount. You know, at that point I was like, well, if I'm just going to get paid $150 an hour to be a therapist, so be it. That's fine. I didn't even know about online marketing or, you know, all of this stuff that I now do in my business, which obviously gives me a lot more money and time and freedom and things like that than I even thought was possible. But when I think about it, it really all came down to that moment where I just decided to take action.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because, like, you know, like you said, we all have that moment where it's like, okay, enough, like I'm doing something different. And I feel like sometimes that comes from outer things, like, you know, like your career is not working, you get fired, or you have a breakup, right? But I also think, you know, for people who are listening, it's like, you don't necessarily have to wait until that point, right?
You
like
don't.
At any moment you can make a decision. So you're an expert in weight loss, and I know that for a lot of us, you know, our relationship to food is so big. You know, it's like, it's so big. It's in every moment of our lives, right? Like from the moment we wake up, our social gatherings, what the media is telling us, there's so much. But one of the things I love about you is that you don't just teach like, okay, eat this, but you teach it away from like lose weight or create a healthy relationship with food from the inside out. What got you inspired around this topic?
Well, it was my own emotional eating journey. I started binge eating when I was 15, after my parents kicked me out. And, you know, I find that usually there will be a traumatic incident that will happen with people. So if you look back, I always say, you know, some people say, well, I was always fat. I grew up fat. You know, I was a fat little kid. And that does happen sometimes. But usually there is a tipping point. And, you know, I ask people to kind of review their family photos and really look at, okay, when did you actually start to put on the weight? And what will typically be the case is something right before that, something traumatic will have happened right before that or around that time. Mm-hmm. So I talk about things, I talk about weight loss blockers a lot in my work, because what I found is in all the years that I've been doing this, there's 7 psychological weight loss blockers. And this weight loss blocker is called the what happened last time weight loss blocker. Mm-hmm. So, you know, sometimes it happens when you're young and sometimes it happens when you're older. Like for instance, I had a client who lost a bunch of weight on Weight Watchers. I think she lost like 80 or 100 pounds or something amazing. Mm-hmm. And her best friend said to her, gosh, you know, after you've lost this weight, you know, you're just not the same person anymore. And this woman was so emotional and so sensitive that all of a sudden she had this totally different self-image of herself based on her best friend. She made a decision subconsciously, of course, that, you know, she didn't want to be this person at this new healthy weight. And so she ended up putting all the weight back on. And so when we went back and we reviewed her, what happened last time, that was her thing. So some women have had, you know, it could be like a divorce, you know, your parents getting divorced. It could be some sort of, you know, something happened with an alcoholic in the family that happens quite frequently. There could also be sexual abuse, or feeling uncomfortable sexually in your body. You know, a lot of women start to mature around the 10, 11, 12, 13 range, and, you know, they start to grow boobs and they have, you know, their bodies are changing. And a lot of us, especially in the Western world, our parents don't talk to us about our changing bodies. And so we don't really know what's going on. We don't feel comfortable with it. They don't feel comfortable with it. And so, you know, I had one client who, she had really big boobs. That was a trait of her family. And she was, I don't know, 12 or 13 or something. And she had to play soccer, and her boobs were bouncing in the gym shirt that she had. And all the guys were laughing at her. Well, that was her big trauma. That was one of her biggest weight loss blockers. So for me, the getting kicked out of my house, my parents got divorced right before that as well. So all of those things kind of led me to start to become an emotional eater. And, thank God I met this psychologist when I was around same age, around 15 and a half, I believe we met. And he introduced me to this technique that I now use to teach in my work. And I do it a bit differently than the traditional way that people do it. But what was amazing about it is that the first time I used it, I felt like, oh my gosh, I could finally feel my body again. All the yucky stuff that was like in my body just released, and I didn't even have to do anything other than say these dumb words he was making me say. Mm-hmm. And so that's really where my journey started. And then, it's just something that I've always been passionate about healing for myself. And I didn't heal it all at once. It definitely was about a 15-year study and research and trying all these different methods, because regular tapping, the way that I learned it from all the professionals, didn't work for me. And so what I ended up developing 5 years ago was a spin on it, that, we call the Watkins method now, which is just, my version of tapping for weight loss that actually works.
So number one, like for people who are listening and maybe they're struggling with weight, is like, go and see if you can see a moment in your life where things changed and what happened. And it can be big things like sexual abuse or divorce, but it can be also minor things like someone, like you said, your client who said that received a comment from a friend, or someone like laughed at my body. I think like I struggled with emotional eating as well for, I think probably like 10 years. And I also was in that path of discovering how to release that. And I think for me, when I think back, I think it was, I don't have like a specific event, but I think it just was like, I developed first than a lot of my friends. So I was very uncomfortable in my body. I was like taller, my body looked more like a woman than a girl. And all my friends are still like flat chest and small. And I just felt like awkward, like I didn't know, and I think that was where it all started, because I remember like at that age, I went from being very extroverted to being more shy and like reserved. And I think because I don't remember, I've thought about this a lot. There wasn't like a big event, but I think it was probably, and boys making fun of me or whatever. And that was it.
Yeah. So I define sexual abuse as anything that makes you feel uncomfortable sexually in your body. So that could be, something as simple as what you just described to something actually majorly traumatic that happens. And I think this is where a lot of women get confused, because when I talk to women, and this is the I'm Too Sexy weight loss blocker also, just, giving context. So a lot of women will think, when I ask them this question, they go, well, there was that one guy that kind of like forced himself on me on a date, but that was my fault. I shouldn't have put myself in that situation. So women have this tendency to blame themselves for things, but the subconscious mind doesn't know about blame or anything like that. It just understands fear and danger, right? So what ends up happening when you have an experience like this, the subconscious mind goes, right, okay, we can never let any kind of predators close to us again. So any sort of man or any kind of sexual attention that we could get from a possible man, like walking down the street or, whatever, we're going to protect you from that. So let's just put this extra weight on, because we know that men find the womanly figure attractive. So let's change that so that they don't find you as attractive. And, so this is one of the reasons that women will just put weight on subconsciously after an event like this, and they won't put two and two together, typically. So I always say to look out for those things that you think were your fault or that you blame yourself for, even if you were in the wrong situation at the wrong time, even if you were drunk, even if you did something stupid, even if you shouldn't have been there. There's absolutely no excuse for somebody to touch you in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, even if you didn't say no. Right? So we're not going to call rape on this guy, right? He's just going for it. But you didn't put up your boundaries and say no. That's still going to be a sexual trauma to you, right? So yes, okay, you should have said no, but you probably didn't have the skill set or the tools, which a lot of women don't. They grew up in codependent households. Most families have no idea how to set boundaries with their kids. And so they grow up in this environment where they don't feel like it's safe to have boundaries or to say no, or they're afraid of displeasing the other person. And so all of that stuff is really important. And it can, in my experience, this is my specialty. This is what I do. In my experience, when you've tried everything else and nothing has worked, it's this thing.